Thanks for joining us tonight. The Oshkosh School Board voted tonight to approve the proposed policy changes to Title IX. This comes after several listening sessions with the community and discussions about what those changes would mean for the district. Drew Best joins us now live from Oshkosh after attending tonight's meeting. Drew.
Bill, the district moved tonight's meeting from their administrative building to Oshkosh West Auditorium as they anticipated a heavy turnout for tonight's vote on updated Title IX regulations. The 5-2 vote approves the updated Title IX policy. However, 5 schools in the district will not follow the updated policies as part of an injunction to court rulings that are taking place in Kansas. The district allowed for 1 hour of public comment on the subject of Title IX, split into 2 30-minute halves for those in support of the new regulations and those against it. The public used the entire allotted time to discuss the regulations. Supporters argued the updated Title IX policy will help protect students in the LGBTQ+ community, with those who were against the regulations argued the changes would affect student safety.
My heart goes out tonight to every trans person and every LGBTQ+ person who has had to listen to our elected leaders discussing and eventually voting on whether or not they are equal persons worthy of equal protections. They are worthy. This isn't even a question.
But if I were to walk into a male locker room and I were to see a woman getting changed, I would not feel comfortable with that. I would find that deeply immoral, regardless of what they think. Now, this is not me hating this person. Of course not. I don't want that. I just simply want to protect not only myself, but their reputation.
Oshkosh's Superintendent Brian Davis tells me the approval is still contingent on federal cases on these discussed policies. He says the district will be keeping an eye on how those cases are ruled. Reporting live in Oshkosh, Drew Best, Action 2 News.